Hi, I'm Gary. In this video series, I will show you how to use the LibGdx library and to build 2D games by creating a 2D game framework on top of it. With the LibGdx library, you can make games for the desktop, Android, and iOS platforms. Their website is libgdx.com, and on the LibGdx website, you can view several popular games that have been made with it. There's a lot of documentation on the site, including one to show you how to create a simple game. In this video series, we'll go beyond making a simple game using our new framework. Let's go to the Setup Instruction page. The first step is to get an IDE set up. Any IDE will work fine. Just pick one that you are comfortable with using. I won't go through setting up the IDE or Java. I assume that you already have that installed. If you plan on creating games for Android, you need to download and install the Android Studios. LibGdx uses libraries from that for creating games on that platform. In the next step, we'll go to generating a project. Here you want to download LibGdx project setup tool. This is an executable jar. Follow the instructions if that doesn't work. Okay, so I have that installed here. And so you just double click to run that. And it'll give you, we'll start with the folder that you're in and give you a test folder. So we're going to put this section under tutorial, and we'll do video demo. That's the folder for your Android SDK, so wherever you have that installed, just leave that. So this will use the lightweight Java gaming library, version 3 for the desktop, Android libraries, iOS, and HTML. I'm going to turn off HTML for right now. These are official extensions that you could use depending on what type of game you're going to make. I won't go into those in these demos, and there's also third-party extensions that you could choose from, and they have a list here, and you can select those. Here you'll give your project name, so whatever you want to call it. Let's call this video tutorial, and then we have a package, so put under org. Aberkeep.game tutorial, and then you click on generate, and sometimes it'll ask you if you want to use a more recent version of stuff, so you can either do yes or no. It's up to you. Okay, and then it will build out. Okay, now that that's done, it gives you instructions on how to open it in various projects. And so we'll go and do that. It's under tutorial. Video tutorial is the one. So what it does is it creates a Gradle project. And you can see here's all the build Gradle scripts, Gradle properties, local properties. And this is your Android desktop and iOS. These are subprojects for Gradle. And those are for starting the application within for those platforms. The core is where you would put your main game code in it. So let's load up the IDE and take a look at it. And then we'll just open that up. Go to video tutorial. Okay. So there's the video tutorial main project, and here's our subprojects. We'll open up the core one and the desktop one. And so under the desktop source package, there's the desktop launcher. And this is your main method. And so this is the one that you would execute to run your game. The core. This class is the base class, LibGdx application. So run the desktop launcher, and then it will load up its default window. So it's the first time, so give it a moment. There we go. And so Bad Logic Games and a red background. So the first thing we actually want to do for making a game, when we change this from application adapter to game, so LibGdx has a class called game that's more geared towards creating games. And one of the things it allows you to do is to use screens. And with screens, you're able to kind of swap them out from your main game. So if you went from like the menu screen to where you're actually playing the game, that's a separate screen. We'll create, we'll just call it game screen for right now. And screen is an implementation, as an interface. So we'll want to implement that. And then we'll need to add all the abstract methods. So another thing, since this is a two-dimensional game, we will need to use an orthographic camera. So here's the orthographic camera. We'll just call that camera. So this is for basically making the rendering two-dimensional instead of three-dimensional. Okay, so we have our sprite batch. So you can see this sprite batch is used for actually drawing the images to the screen. Now with the camera, we'll need to create a new graphic camera. And we'll need to set that to orthographic. And so we'll use Y down as false. And we'll need a width and height. We don't have a specific width and height here. So we are going to create parameters to store. Store the width and height. So for right now, let's just kind of set that to be, we'll do a height of 600 and a width of 800. So we have our camera. Now we need to set its position to be basically centered. Get our width divided by 2, so that's the center, and our height divided by 2, and 0 depth is 0. And you want to call camera dot update, and that gets that set up. So in the dispose, this is for cleaning up your objects, and so you want to dispose of the batch and your images and that. Now in the render, I'll comment this out for just a moment. We'll need to set your batch, set your projection matrix to be camera.combined, and then you want to call super.render. Now we are going to use our screens, and this screen has a render that takes a float, so you have an update time. That's what that is. And so that's actually delta time. As you can see, we'll need our batch here. And so we need to pass in the batch to our screen. Create a constructor that will take our sprite batch. So we'll set it, and we're going to pull in the texture from here. Yep, import that. And so now this show method is called at when it first gets basically first gets displayed onto the screen. So that's kind of your setup method. Put our batch logic image there, and then we have our dispose, and then there has a dispose method for this guy. These for right now, we're not going to do anything. So recap what we've done. So now we've created our game object. This guy will launch the same game tutorial object. He extends game. He sets up our camera, our sprite batch, clears out the screen, and then we have our screen set up. So actually what we need to do now is create our game screen. Pass in our batch, and we will need to set the screen. Then the game class will then take that screen and it will call the show method at the start, and then the render method, and then the dispose method when it's done. There it is. So you can see it ran the show method, and here's the image it's running. Boom, same thing. Okay, so that's the first step. Now we want to simplify this process. We don't want to build this orthographic camera, set all the position every time we create a new project for our game. So what we'll do is we'll create a game framework. We'll just make it a Maven application. That call it LibGdx 2D framework. We'll give it a package of LibGdx game framework. We'll just make this version 0.1, and we'll make that our default package. And there we go. We got that created. So in our game framework, we'll start by making a new class. We'll call this base game. And this class is going to extend the game object. Now, obviously, we need to add that to our palm. There we go. There we go. It added it. Logic Games. And so in here, I'll add the sprite batch, our width and our height. Yep, add that. Make these protected for right now so that our child classes can have access to that. We get a default constructor. We're going to override the create method. So in here, we'll pull everything from this up to here. All that set up will be there. And then we need to override the dispose method. And then we dispose of our batch. We need to override the render method. Copy these two over. Right. And we have a resize method. We'll override that. And if you resize, you also need to update your camera. Okay, and now we'll also create a base screen class. We're going to put that in a separate package. And we'll just call that screen. Make our new class. Base screen class is going to implement our screen interface. That one. So this is going to be an abstract class. And so we're going to put kind of all the basic logic that everybody's going to need, which will be our sprite batch. We'll also want a background color. Background color. And we'll want to be able to set the width and the height. And we'll just create a default color, which will be black. And then we will want to override the render method for delta time. Okay, so what we need to do, we're going to import GDX, graphics language, and we're going to do a clear color, and it's going to be based on the background color, R, and your alpha layer. And then you also want to set clear to be GL30, color buffer bit. And then we always need to do a batch.begin. And then we want to do batch.end. Oops, not enable. And now we will also need to set the batch. So we create a method for setting the batch. Add some methods for setting the background color. So that is the background color, and then you want to also be able to set red, green, blue colors as floats, which is the default for that they use. And if you're more familiar with the 0 to 225 range for red, green, blue, we'll create a method to convert it to the float for you. One more thing that we need, since this is an abstract class, we're going to create a method called renderChild that will take the delta time, and then we'll make that an abstract method. Okay, so we will build that out. So that was successful. Now we need to add that to our project. So we actually will go to our video tutorial, we'll go to the build Gradle script, and down here at the bottom we will add the dependency. And so that dependency is actually this. And colon our framework and our version 0.1, and then we'll come back in here and then run this. Now you notice that we're getting these warnings for Java 7 here. Add this, set it to version 8. Just need to be cleaned up again. Okay, there it is, and it's now in. So now we go back in here for our game tutorial. There it is. Everkeep game framework, base game. Now we don't need all these guys. See, they're in the parent. We don't need that, and we don't need that. Game screen, change that to extend our base screen. Base screen, and so this now needs to override height and width. And height. Oh, lost our texture here for some reason. And now, since our base game has, base screen has a renderChild method. RenderChild. We already did our batch. width and height, width, height. So in base game, there is a set screen method. We're going to override it. And what we're going to do, we're going to cast it to a base screen. We'll set the batch. There it is, black background, and we have our image. So there we go. Now we got the base game and screen set up, made it a lot easier. So here's our base game. Look how much cleaner that is, one method. Our game screen. Right now we just have our show method. We render the child, and all we have to focus on is basically building our game at this point. And we're all set. All right, this was a pretty long video and kind of covered the basics. And the next video we'll go into doing some rendering with the textures and the various draw methods. Then we'll get into the animations, and then we'll build out a framework for making that easier. Okay, till next time, this is Gary, and thank you.